Today, the Putin regime, you're right, it doesn't just kill, it's ruthlessly and brutally executes its opponent. And obviously, Alexei is the biggest victim of this regime, but unfortunately not the last. First of all, I want to say, I absolutely agree with David's position. We are dealing with proper mafia state, and leader of this mafia state believe in his absolute impunity. And so in February 2010, Putin spoke in Munich with threat and intimidation. And now, just in February 2024, he ended his speech with the murder Alexei Navalny. That is reality. And actually today, the Putin regime, you're right, it doesn't just kill, it's ruthlessly and brutally executes its opponent. And obviously, Alexei is the biggest victim of this regime, but unfortunately not the last one, not last victim. We have Karamurza, for example, I believe it's a British citizen, and his wife an American, and children Americans citizen, and now just he's in the Putin hands, and we need to do something for rescue him from Putin tentacles, and because he's maybe next victim. But as our citizen, and we need to do something.
Well, obviously, Alexei Navalny, he chose to return to Russia. He would have known that that would put him in danger. I mean, fine, if you are a target of Putin, you are in danger wherever in the world you are. But he would have known that he would likely have been locked up as he was. Why do you think he chose to go back knowing that?
Well, we told him for its deadly risk, and I believe he understood it's an absolutely deadly risk, but it's a heroic act. We can't discuss about personal heroic act. We are not so much hero for give assessment for his action. Is a really he believe for leader of opposition must be with his people. That is a proper lesson for every of us. Just I'm not so much hero like Alexei Navalny, and I just only admire his action, but no more.
So, Roderic, I want to turn to you, because what we were hearing from David Petraeus there was about, the sort of global reaction to this and where things go from here. We've heard from Lord Cameron about the potential for further sanctions or action against Russia. What do you think the UK government can realistically do now in response to what has happened to Navalny?
Well, there's a great deal we can do. The Sunday Times today, on its front page, has David Cameron calling for the seizure of Russia's assets, its bank assets. Russia has $300 billion worth of reserves that are frozen. Seizing them, actually, I think would be a largely symbolic act, because I don't think Russia is ever going to get that money back. But there are a number of other things that are, to me, critically important. And I hope that David Cameron and the others gathered in Munich will decide on. And the very first thing is that we do need to give more help to Ukraine. Martin Wolf of the Financial Times has calculated that if you combine the assistance being given to Ukraine of the United Kingdom, the European Union, and the United States, that's less than 0.25% of their GDP. That's less than we spend on energy subsidies. So we need to be giving Ukraine more help now. Secondly, we need to build up European defense. We're only spending just over 2% of GDP in this country on our defense. At the end of the Cold War, we were spending twice as much. And earlier in the Cold War, nearly 3 times as much. We can afford to spend more. It is critical for European security that we do so. Thirdly, we should be squeezing Russian oil exports even more than we're already doing. And fourthly, there are other sanctions that need tightening up, particularly on the supply of equipment for industrial use in Russia. There are still British companies trading with Russia. That needs to be stopped. So I think there's a big agenda of actions that would have real effect on Russia.
And in terms of whether or not this was a deliberate act by Putin, again, we heard from David Petraeus on his thoughts on whether or not this was a murder or an accidental death. There have been mixed sort of assessments of whether or not this would have been useful timing for Putin or not. What is your assessment on that point?
Well, the point about Navalny is that he focused on corruption in Russia, and that strikes a chord with people of every persuasion right across the country. And the other point about Navalny is that he was brilliant at using social media. His video on Putin's palace was seen by a quarter of the Russian population within 1 month. It's now had 129 million views. So now we have the news of his death that is orbiting around Russia at a time when the Kremlin is very nervous about an election taking place in March, a rigged election in which there is only one candidate that can win, but they're desperate that Putin should get above the 77% vote he got last time. It's very hard to tell at this point whether Russian voters will now listen to the message that Navalny was giving them, which is to vote for anybody other than Putin, or whether they will simply conclude there is no point in voting since nobody is allowed to oppose Putin. But what Navalny has done and will live on after him is that he has embedded massive evidence right around the Russian population of that this is a monstrously corrupt regime. And over time, I think this undermines the regime. This is a regime of elderly men who are scared of any opposition and have to use fear and violence to control the country, and who are struggling with the costs of this war. And I think the prospects, the long-term prospects for Putin's regime as he enters his next term of office are pretty bleak.
Alexandra, I want to end with you. I mean, we've just been hearing there from Sir Roderic about the things that the UK government could do to prevent Putin from growing more powerful. Now, you've long been a Conservative donor. I think you still are donating to the Conservative Party. So what is your message to the Prime Minister today after the death of Alexei Navalny?
I believe this current government, I believe the Conservative government done so much for Ukraine, and especially in Boris Johnson time, when UK government first opened door and supply Ukraine for weapon and protect lizard weapons, serious weapon, heavy weapon. And I believe, and Boris was a driver and driver organization of global organization of support Ukraine and talk with American president. I know that definitely. And today we should to accelerate our activity. We need to do more. We need to talk with global leaders, because we know our limitation capacity of weapon, limitation capacity of ammunition. And what we can do much more political and financial support Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's very important. We must be leader of and champion of coalition against Russia, military coalition against Russia and political coalition against Russia. That is our mission. We cannot be first country who can give Ukraine everything what Ukraine need to victory. But politically, we can be driver political agenda of support Ukraine. That is a very important our mission and mission of British government today. I believe for today, they're not only Conservative government on the same way, and Labour government, and Labour opposition, and Lib Dem member of the parliament, and generally British society as a stay on the same way. We need to politically support Ukraine and financially, and that is a very valuable really support.